Can you prove where your raw materials are coming from? That question is no longer optional if you're importing silicon or cotton-based products from China. And it's at the heart of compliance with the UFLPA, or the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. Hi, I'm Billy Miner from Insight Quality Services. And if you are importing these or other products from China, then you've probably thought about how to prove where your raw materials are coming from. Today I'm talking with our founder, Andy Church, about how traceability audits can help you to answer that question and keep you compliant with the UFLPA. To do that, we'll take a quick look at one of our recent projects. So let's begin. Thank you for joining me today, Andy.
Good to be here to discuss traceability, Billy.
Excellent. So, recently, Andy, we've had some engagements with a client that purchases a lot of different types of silicone from China that they use to make products like adhesives and coatings, sealants, and other materials. So I thought it would be good to get your perspective on this. Silicone products come with a big UFLPA risk, largely because of Xinjiang's role in China's silicon industry. So we've been helping one of our clients to audit their suppliers to get more visibility into their tier 1, tier 2, and even their tier 3 suppliers, verifying that their raw materials are being sourced from the right provinces and not the flagged region. So we call this type of engagement a traceability audit, right? It's also relevant for companies that are making cotton-based products, but today we're talking about silicon. So I'd like to ask you some questions, Andy, to get your perspective on these audits. So first question is, why is traceability such a big concern these days? And what has changed in how importers are expected to trace their supply chain back to the source?
It used to be verifying a factory was capable of making the products that you were buying was enough. Now, as you mentioned, traceability is vitally important to companies who are manufacturing product overseas, because just verifying your factory can do what they say can do is just one element of due diligence. You need to ensure that the factory is procuring the raw materials and ingredients necessary to produce your products from legitimate sources, and sources that aren't restricted by regulations in the States or the European Union. And so traceability is something that is now a must for companies. It's a big concern these days because it's not only about the regulatory compliance component, which is very important, but it's also about safety and quality concerns. It increased consumer demand for transparency, the ability now on a lot of food products and even some apparel to be able to scan a QR code and see where the ingredients or that food was harvested, or the ingredients or raw materials in an apparel, piece of apparel like a shirt, where the cotton came from. So there's also the consumer demand component of it. So coupled with regulatory compliance, the need to be proactive in sharing information with your consumers, but also the regulatory bodies if they request it, is a must. Why traceability, audits, and mapping your supply chain are critical.
Okay, so you've got regulations in the US and the EU that are driving this, along with consumer demand, are driving the need for these kind of traceability audits. So when we do a traceability audit, what are the auditors actually looking at? And how do they go beyond the paperwork to verify the province of origin?
Great question. What do auditors look for when they're conducting a traceability audit? First, they're going to start with documentation and records, and they're going to trace those back. If incoming raw materials from a supplier don't have the proper bill of materials or bill of lading or the documentation to show where it came from, that's a concern. Is there proper processes and system functionality in place for the factory or the manufacturing facility to verify where they're receiving their products? Do they have their own due diligence or a supplier audit program to ensure that they're also conducting traceability and verification and due diligence of their suppliers? There's areas of nonconformance when we see an issue where incoming raw materials into the warehouse don't have a corresponding bill of lading or an invoice, then the auditors would research that and discuss with the proper personnel at the factories, whether it be the purchasing department or potentially, QA staff if they're conducting incoming raw materials. So the auditors are looking for discrepancies, they're looking for verification and traceability of documentations and records, and verifying that the processes exist for the factory to ensure that the products and components they're receiving for use in their manufacturing process are from legitimate sources and not run afoul of some of the regulations that are exist in countries where products are imported.
So they're really looking at these documents, verifying the processes, making sure that the processes are being followed. Um, and they're really going into a lot of depth here. And really, I guess the question is, are suppliers generally cooperative when it comes to this, or do they tend to be hesitant about traceability audits? And how does that affect our auditors' ability to do a thorough job?
Key component of audits and dealing with the factories is communication. Oftentimes the hesitation on the part of the factory or their suppliers as we conduct upstream traceability exercises is a lack of understanding. So, working with our clients to communicate from the outset what the objective of a traceability audit is, what is going to be looked at, what is going to be the process of the audit, and communicating with not only the factory that our client works one on one with, but their suppliers. So, addressing lack of understanding and also a resistance to change. This is the way I've always done it. Why do I have to have this documentation now? So that also is a component of communication properly, is understanding that there's always going to be a resistance to change. How do you overcome it? The factories often have a lack of expertise or resources to verify or have somebody spend time with the auditors, but that's an internal issue that the factory has to address. This isn't something that is going to go away. Over time, traceability audits and due diligence of factory suppliers is going to increase. So for a factory not to have the lack of resources or expertise is something that they're going to need to address internally and overcome. There's also the fear of exposure. They're doing something wrong. They don't want to find out. Well, that's certainly a piece of why traceability audits are conducted. And I think there's an opportunity there for the factories to come clean, work with their supplier. If one of our clients has been working with a factory for years, and they have had no quality compliance issues. They ship on time. And now, with some recent changes, the factory needs to find new suppliers and they've been slow to do so. It's time for those factories to come clean, work with their client to find new suppliers. If there's a cost issue, then work together to figure out how that's going to be incorporated in the price. But there is hesitation when it comes to audits, but that doesn't mean that there also isn't a lot of cooperation. Many factories are excited about the improved efficiency and reduction in risk that traceability audits can provide them. Factories who are doing the right things and doing things well are excited for these audits. They believe that they build trust, stronger relationships, and partnerships with their clients, which they do. And so, while hesitation is largely a lack of proper communication, I think. Cooperation is something that we're seeing much more uh, proactively with suppliers, is that they are cooperating, they want to be engaged, they're looking for advice or the steps necessary to help improve because they have a hunger, but maybe they lack some of that expertise.
Makes sense, Andy. So, yeah, that communication is key, and it seems like, it's the benefits are not necessarily just to our clients, but also to the suppliers that they're working with. And, so far we've talked about auditing at the supplier, but how far upstream is upstream enough? Insight has now been auditing actual quartz mines, so not just the silicone suppliers, but going further up to the actual mines. So, how far do companies really need to go to stay compliant with all the regulations?
How far is far enough? That's a great question. How far upstream is enough? Well, I think that answer is going to depend on the industry of our client, the raw materials or components that go into their product. And so often the answer to that question about how far upstream is enough is going to depend on the client's products, what their supply chain looks like, how many tiers there are. So if we look at a company that is selling shrimp, importing shrimp in the United States, there's not a whole lot of steps there. You have the shrimp farm, packaging, and then it's transported into the States. Versus we look at uh, tomato paste, you have the tomato grower, you have the production facility, which is taking the tomatoes and crushing them and making paste, whatever that however that process specifically works, and then they're importing it. So there's another added step. And then if we look at apparel, you have cotton, the cotton farmers that then go to the cotton mills, that then may go to dyeing facilities or straight to the manufacturer who then has the capabilities to dye. So as supply chains expand, how far enough upstream is going to vary. But for compliance with some of the regulatory issues in Western countries that deal with labor, it is going to be all the way back to the farm or the mine. And in some cases, that may not be necessary. So there's no single answer. Some of the concerns or the limitations are going to be about what is accessible, what is documented, what is being able to be verified. And so there is no single answer about what is the uh, right way or proper way or how far to go upstream. But in most cases, there's going to be some components that need to be go all the way back to the farm or to the mine. That may not always be the case, but that is going to be a likelihood for many of our clients' products.
So the answer is really it depends. There's no single answer. So we've been talking about traceability audits, and for companies that have not conducted a traceability audit before, when should they consider it? And what would be the first step at getting started?
For companies who haven't considered traceability audits, I would suggest that one of the first steps they could undertake is trying to conduct their own internal traceability audit. Go pull a product from your warehouse or your distribution center. Are you able to determine when that product was made and by what factory, what supplier? Those are minimums, right? So this is often a step that's conducted in a recall exercise, and that's one of the areas where traceability is so important. So for companies who aren't doing anything with traceability now, is pick one of your items, pick a SKU, and try to trace it back to the PO number when the order was placed as an exercise. And if you can do that, that's a great first step. You already have some of the systems in place necessary that then can incorporate your supplier being able to trace back. So that's the first step. I would look at internally, what are you capable of tracing back? And if you haven't done any traceability audits in the past, have you done any audits of your supply chain? And if not, It'd be an opportunity to start with a quality systems process based audit to ensure that your factories have the capability to trace back product. Because if they don't, jumping right into a traceability audit without having done other audit work or verification of your supplier's capabilities would be a wasted effort.
Makes sense. Thank you, Andy, for answering these questions about traceability audits. It's a topic that has really grown in importance. So, whether you're already auditing or you're just starting to think about it, at Insight, we're here to help you navigate it the right way. So, if you would like to learn more about these audits or are thinking about conducting them, please reach out to us through our website. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more supply chain signals in the future. Take care.